The space station Omega hung like a giant metal spider in the darkness of space. Its 8 docking arms stretched out from a central hub, each one holding various ships from across the galaxy. Colorful lights blinked along its surface, marking landing zones and entry points for the thousands of visitors who came through each day. Jack Wilson watched through the viewport as his ship, the Star Voyager, docked at Arm 3. He had been working as a cargo loader for 5 years now, moving from one end of human space to the other. This was his first time at Omega, a station known for being one of the few places where all species could mix freely. "All crew members have 4 days of leave," announced Captain Rogers over the ship's speakers. "Report back by 0800 hours on the 5th day. Remember, you represent Earth while you're here. Don't cause trouble." Jack smiled to himself. The captain always gave this speech no matter which station they visited. Humans had only joined the Galactic Union 20 years ago, and many alien races still viewed them with suspicion or curiosity. One drunk human starting a fight could set back years of diplomatic work. "Got any plans?" asked Bill, another cargo worker who shared Jack's shift. "Just a quiet drink and some rest," Jack replied, grabbing his small travel bag from under his bunk. "You?" Bill grinned. "They say Omega has the best gambling halls this side of the Orion arm. Might try my luck." "Good luck with that," Jack said. "Don't lose all your pay." The 2 men joined the line of crew members waiting to exit the ship. Security checks at Omega were strict but fast. A bored-looking blue-skinned Azurian waved a scanner over each person, checking for weapons or illegal substances. When Jack's turn came, the alien barely looked at him before waving him through. The main concourse of Omega was a riot of sights, sounds, and smells. Hundreds of different species moved through the wide hallway, some familiar to Jack, others completely strange. Tall, thin Veldarians with their 4 arms pushed past short, round Borlians. A group of crystalline quartz beings floated above the crowd, their bodies glowing with internal light. Signs in dozens of languages flashed advertisements for shops, restaurants, and entertainment. The air smelled of food from 100 worlds, some delicious, others making Jack's eyes water. Music played from various establishments, creating a chaotic but somehow pleasant background noise. Jack moved carefully through the crowd, following the signs toward the residential sectors. The company had booked basic rooms for the crew in Section 12, a mid-level area that catered to working-class visitors. He checked in at an automated kiosk, received his room key, and decided to drop off his bag before exploring. His room was small but clean. A single bed, a tiny bathroom, and a screen showing station news and announcements. Jack tossed his bag onto the bed and checked his credit balance on his wrist unit. He had enough for a good meal and some drinks with plenty left over. Maybe he'd even buy a souvenir for his sister back on Earth. After a quick shower and change of clothes, Jack headed back out. The station operated on a standard 24-hour cycle, but with no day or night in space, activities continued around the clock. Even though it was technically evening according to ship time, the concourse remained as busy as before. Jack consulted a station map on his wrist unit, looking for somewhere quiet to get a drink. The main entertainment district would be too crowded and too expensive. He scrolled through options in the outer rings and found a place called the Lonely Star. The reviews, translated from various languages, suggested it was relaxed, diverse, and reasonably priced. Perfect. The bar was located in Ring 4, Section 22, a part of the station that saw less tourist traffic. Jack took a transport tube down 3 levels and followed the signs through increasingly quiet corridors. The further from the main concourse he got, the more he noticed the station showing its age. Paint peeled in corners and some lights flickered, waiting for maintenance that was always scheduled but never quite completed. When he finally found the Lonely Star, it looked nothing like its name suggested. There were no stars, lonely or otherwise, in its simple sign. Just the name in standard galactic common script with human English below it. Jack pushed open the door and stepped inside. The bar was about half full, with an interesting mix of species. A group of furry Cantarians played, a game with glowing pieces in one corner. 2 human miners sat at the bar itself talking quietly. A blue-skinned bartender with 6 eyes polished glasses behind the counter. Jack found an empty stool at the bar and sat down. The bartender floated over, literally floated, as its species had evolved in low gravity and used anti-grav units to move in standard environments. What'll it be, human? The bartender asked in accented but clear English. Whatever beer you have that's closest to Earth standard, Jack replied. The bartender nodded and moved away. Jack looked around, taking in the atmosphere. The walls were covered with items from dozens of worlds, flags, strange artifacts, what looked like alien sports equipment. A sign near the door read, "Leave your politics and grudges outside," in 15 languages. The bartender returned with a glass of amber liquid. Proxima wheat beer, made by humans in the colony there, close enough to your Earth drinks. Jack nodded his thanks and took a sip. It wasn't bad, a little sweeter than he preferred, but definitely recognizable as beer. He relaxed, enjoying the relative quiet after weeks in the noisy confines of the ship. His peace didn't last long. The door swung open and 3 tall figures ducked to enter. Jack recognized them immediately as Krevlaxians, one of the newest members of the Galactic Union. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, with scaly green skin and 4 arms. Their faces featured vertical slit pupils and small breathing holes instead of a nose. Their species had been spacefaring for centuries before humans had even invented steam engines. The bar went quiet as the Krevlaxians looked around. They moved with the confidence of those who knew their physical superiority. Most species gave Krevlaxians a wide berth. They had a reputation for being aggressive, especially when drinking. To Jack's dismay, the 3 aliens approached the bar and took the empty seats next to him. The largest one, with a scar running down the right side of its face, glanced at Jack with obvious curiosity. "Human," it said, the translator device on its chest, converting its clicking language to English. "Not many of your kind in this part of the station." Jack nodded politely but said nothing, taking another sip of his beer. He didn't want trouble. The captain's warning echoed in his mind. The Krevlaxian wasn't deterred by Jack's silence. "I am Xerx. These are my clutchmates Kral and Traz." It pointed to the other 2 with one of its lower arms. "Jack," he replied simply. Xerx made a sound that the translator didn't catch, possibly laughter. "You are new to space, yes? Your species only recently learned to leave your planet." There was clear condescension in the alien's tone. Jack had encountered this attitude before. Many older, spacefaring races viewed humans as primitive newcomers, barely worthy of notice. "We're doing all right," Jack said mildly, still hoping to avoid conflict. The bartender approached the Krevlaxians. "What can I get you?" 3 glasses of your strongest alcohol," Xerx demanded, "and another drink for our human friend here." Before Jack could protest, the bartender had placed another beer in front of him. Xerx paid with a wave of a credit chip over the counter scanner. "We are celebrating," Xerx explained, turning back to Jack. "Our ship has just completed a successful trading mission, 12 worlds in 60 days. "Congratulations," Jack said, raising his glass slightly. The Krevlaxians received their drinks, a glowing blue liquid that steamed slightly. They each raised a glass with their upper right arm. "To profitable ventures," Xerx declared, then downed the entire drink in one go. Its companions did the same. Jack took a small sip of his beer, watching the aliens carefully. The other patrons seemed to be doing the same, some edging away from the bar. "So, human," Xerx said, leaning closer to Jack. "Tell us about Earth. We hear your planet still uses, what is the word? Guns? Projectile weapons?" The alien's voice carried a note of mockery. Jack tensed slightly. "Some do, for hunting or sport. Our military has more advanced options." "Adorable," Xerx commented. "My species abandoned such primitive tools thousands of years ago. Now we use energy weapons or neural disruptors, much more civilized." The word primitive hung in the air between them. Jack had heard it many times before when dealing with older spacefaring races. It always carried the same dismissive tone. Other customers in the bar were watching now. The 2 human miners had gone quiet, eyeing the situation warily. The bartender hovered nearby, all six eyes blinking in what Jack guessed was concern. Different paths of development, Jack said carefully. Humans focus on different technologies. Xerxes' vertical pupils narrowed. Like what? What could primitive humans possibly teach the galaxy? The challenge was clear in the alien's voice. Jack knew he should back down, finish his drink, and leave. But something in him, pride maybe, or just stubbornness, wouldn't let the insult pass. Games, for one thing, Jack said. Humans have developed thousands of games over our history. Games of skill, chance, strategy. They're part of how we learn and socialize. Xerx made that untranslated sound again. Games? You think games are a worthy contribution to galactic culture? The three Krevlaxians looked at the small dice with a mix of curiosity and scorn. The bar remained quiet as everyone watched Jack and the aliens. These little cubes are your great human invention? Xerx asked, turning one of the dice between his upper fingers. What do they do? Jack kept his face calm. They're tools for a game of chance and skill called craps. It's been played on Earth for hundreds of years. Kral, the second Krevlaxian, made a clicking sound that his translator didn't catch. Your species spent centuries throwing number cubes for entertainment. No wonder you took so long to reach the stars. A few aliens in the bar laughed, but Jack just smiled. Sometimes the simplest things teach the most important lessons. Traz, the third Krevlaxian who had been quiet until now, leaned forward. Explain this game, human. How does it work? The six-eyed bartender floated closer, watching carefully. The two human miners at the other end of the bar were paying close attention now. One of them caught Jack's eye and gave a small nod of encouragement. The basic game is simple, Jack explained, taking back the dice. I roll these two dice, and different number combinations mean different things. Some combinations win right away, some lose right away, and others set what we call a point that I need to roll again before rolling a 7. That sounds unnecessarily complicated, Xerx said, his vertical pupils narrowing. Most good things are, Jack replied. But the real heart of the game is in the betting. Players can bet on or against the person rolling, or on specific combinations coming up. The bartender cleared his throat, or made whatever sound his species used to get attention. If you're going to gamble in my establishment, keep it small and friendly. I don't want any trouble. Just a friendly cultural exchange, Jack assured him. Xerx's scales shifted slightly, showing a darker green color that Jack guessed might indicate interest or excitement. So this is a gambling game? Now I understand why humans would enjoy it. Basic instincts seeking reward with little effort. Jack ignored the insult. Would you like to try a round? See how your advanced alien minds handle a primitive human game? The challenge was clear, and Xerx couldn't back down without losing face in front of his clutchmates. Very well. What are the stakes? Jack thought for a moment. He didn't want to bet too little and seem scared, but he also couldn't afford to lose too much. 10 credits? Xerx made that clicking laugh again. 10? That wouldn't buy a drink on most worlds. Let's say 100 credits. A murmur went through the bar. 100 credits was nearly a day's wages for most workers. Jack hesitated, but he could feel the eyes of everyone on him. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about human pride. 100 it is, Jack agreed, placing his credit chip on the counter. The bartender moved quickly, sliding a small scanner between them. Both parties transfer funds to the house. Winner gets paid after the game. Xerx placed his chip on the scanner, and Jack did the same. The device blinked green, confirming the transfer. Now, Xerx said, his voice carrying a hint of challenge, explain exactly how to play your human game. By now, more bar patrons had gathered around. A group of four-armed Veldarians left their table to watch. Two floating quartz beings hovered nearby, their crystalline bodies reflecting the bar's lights. Even the furry Cantarians had paused their own game to observe. Jack picked up the dice and held them in his palm so everyone could see. In craps, the first roll is called the come-out roll. If I roll a 7 or 11 on this first throw, I win immediately. If I roll a 2, 3, or 12, I lose immediately. Any other number becomes my point, and to win I need to roll that same number again before rolling a 7. The odds favor the house in the long run, added one of the human miners from down the bar. But a skilled player can make it work. Skill? In throwing random number cubes? Kral asked, his translator making his disbelief clear. That's not possible. Jack shrugged. There's a rhythm to it. A feel. Some humans spend years perfecting their technique. This caused more clicking laughter from the Krevlaxians. Years wasted then, Zerk said. In a truly random system, technique is meaningless. The bartender cleared a space on the counter, marking a small area with a glowing blue line. Keep your throws within the boundary, please. My establishment, my rules. Jack nodded and held the dice in his closed fist. In human tradition, we often have small rituals before rolling. Some blow on the dice for luck. He demonstrated, blowing gently on the dice in his hand. Others have special words or movements. Superstition, Traz commented. Primitive minds trying to find patterns where none exist? Maybe, Jack agreed with a small smile. But it's worked for us for centuries. The bar had grown even more crowded, as word spread about the human challenging 3 Krevlaxians to a game. Different species whispered among themselves, and Jack noticed some discreet betting happening in the corners. Roll your cubes, human, Zerk said impatiently. Let's see. If your superstitions help you against mathematical probability, Jack took a deep breath, shook the dice in his closed hand, and then threw them onto the marked area of the counter. The small white cubes tumbled and spun before coming to rest. A 5 and a 6. 11 total. That's a win for me, Jack said, calmly, trying to hide his relief. 7 or 11 on the first roll wins immediately. Zerx's scales darkened considerably, which Jack now definitely identified as a sign of emotion. Anger, most likely. Luck, the alien declared. Nothing but random chance. Isn't that what you expected from a primitive game? Jack asked innocently. The bartender's scanner blinked, and 200 credits were added to Jack's account. His original bet plus Zerx's 100. Another round, Zerx demanded. Double stakes. Jack glanced at his credit balance. He could afford to lose 200 credits if things went badly. It would mean a less comfortable shore leave, but not disaster. And if he won again, 200 each, Jack agreed. Same rules. The crowd around them had grown even larger. Jack noticed a station security officer watching from near the door, but the officer wasn't interfering, just observing. Zerx and Jack both transferred the credits to the house account. Kral and Traz moved closer, their forearms folded in various positions as they watched intently. You were lucky once, human, Zerx said, but the math is clear. Your primitive game cannot be beaten consistently. Jack picked up the dice again. Would you like to examine them first? Make sure they're not rigged? This seemed to surprise the Krevlaxian. He reached out with one of his upper arms and took the dice, turning them over carefully and examining each side. The other bar patrons watched in silence as the alien inspected the simple objects. They appear to be standard number cubes, Zerx finally admitted, handing them back. No obvious technology or trickery. Just simple plastic and chance, Jack confirmed, taking the dice back. He repeated his earlier ritual, blowing gently on the cubes before shaking them in his closed fist. The bar seemed to hold its collective breath as Jack threw the dice again. They bounced and rolled across the marked area before stopping. A 4 and a 3. 7 total. 7 on the come-out roll, Jack announced. That's another win for me. A mix of cheers and groans went through the crowd as side bets were settled. Jack kept his expression neutral, but inside he was celebrating. 400 credits would make for a very comfortable shore leave. Zerx's scales had turned almost black now. The Krevlaxian's vertical pupils had narrowed to thin slits and his breathing holes flared with each breath. Kral put a restraining hand on his clutchmate's shoulder, but Zerx shook it off. One more game, the alien demanded. 500 credits. The bartender's 6 eyes all blinked rapidly. Gentlemen, perhaps this has gone far enough? I'm willing if he is. Jack interrupted. He knew he should probably stop while he was ahead, but something about the Krevlaxian's arrogance made him want to push further. 500 credits, Zerx repeated, his translator making his voice sound even more aggressive than usual. Unless humans lack the courage for real stakes. Jack considered his options. 500 credits was more than he could comfortably lose, but he'd won twice already, and he had a feeling about the dice today. Plus, the whole bar was watching. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about how aliens viewed all humans. Let's make it interesting, Jack suggested. 500 credits, and if I win, you and your friends publicly admit that humans aren't as primitive as you think. Xerxes' scales shifted slightly, showing bands of lighter green among the dark. And when I win, you admit your species' inferiority and give me those luck cubes as a souvenir of human foolishness. The bartender looked concerned, all 6 eyes focused on Jack. This is getting beyond a friendly game. It's fine, Jack assured. I'm just raising the stakes to make things interesting. The security officer by the door had moved a little closer but still didn't interfere. Different species throughout the bar were watching with obvious interest, some recording the scene with small devices. I'll need to see your 500 credits. First, Jack said to Xerxes. The Krevlaxian placed his credit chip on the scanner and the bartender confirmed the amount before nodding. Jack took a deep breath and matched the bet with his own winnings. The bar had grown completely silent. Even the background music had been turned off. Species from dozens of worlds watched as the human picked up the 2 small dice once more. The dice stopped rolling. A 5 and a 3. 8 total. That's my point, Jack explained to the silent crowd. Now I need to roll another 8 before I roll a 7 to win. Xerxes' scales shifted to a lighter green. The alien's posture relaxed, slightly. The odds favor me now, human. The probability of rolling a 7 is higher than rolling your specific 8 again. That's true, Jack admitted. There are 6 ways to roll a 7 with 2 dice, but only 5 ways to roll an 8. 6 out of 36 possible combinations versus 5 out of 36, Kral added, showing unexpected knowledge of probability. The math clearly favors us now. The bartender hovered nearby, all 6 eyes watching carefully. The security officer had moved to a position where he could intervene quickly if needed. The crowd pressed closer, eager to see if human luck would hold against alien confidence. Shall we continue? Jack asked, picking up the dice again. Xerxes made a gesture, with his upper arms that seemed to indicate agreement. Roll, human. Let the laws of probability teach you a lesson about challenging advanced species. Jack looked down at the small white cubes in his hand. They seemed so simple, just plastic with black dots. But to humans, they represented centuries of gaming tradition. How many fortunes had been won and lost on the roll of dice throughout human history? How many games played in alleys, casinos, and living rooms across Earth and now beyond? He went through his ritual again, blowing softly on the dice and shaking them in his closed fist. The bar was completely silent. Jack could hear the soft hum of the station's air recyclers and the faint buzz of the lights above. With a flick of his wrist, he released the dice. They tumbled across the marked area of the bar counter, bouncing against the glowing blue boundary line before coming to rest. 3 and a 5. 8 total. The bar erupted in noise. Different species reacted in their own ways, some shouting, some making high-pitched whistles, others stomping feet or clapping hands. The 2 human miners at the end of the bar cheered loudly, raising their drinks in salute. That's a win, Jack said calmly, though his heart was racing. I rolled my point before rolling a 7. Xerxes stared at the dice in disbelief. His scales had turned almost black again, with strange patterns rippling across his skin. Impossible, he hissed, the translator making his voice sound even harsher than usual. The odds sometimes don't tell the whole story, Jack finished, for him. The bartender's scanner blinked as it processed the outcome. 1,000 credits were added to Jack's account, his original bet plus Xerxes' 500. Jack had now won 400 from the first 2 games and 500 from this one, for a total of 900 credits profit. Nearly 2 weeks. Wages in less than 10 minutes. But more important than the money was the deal they had made. Jack looked at Xerxes expectantly. I believe you owe me something else besides credits. The Krevlaxian's forearms moved in what appeared to be a gesture of frustration. His clutchmates, Kral and Traz, shifted uncomfortably beside him. "Well?" Jack prompted. "You agreed to publicly admit that humans aren't as primitive as you thought." The crowd watched in silence. This was more than just a gambling win now. It was about respect between species. The security officer near the door stood straighter, ready to step in if things went wrong. After a long moment, Xerxes' scales slowly shifted back to their normal green color. "The human has demonstrated unexpected skill with his game." Jack shook his head. "That wasn't our agreement." The tension in the room grew thicker. Several patrons moved back slightly, creating space in case trouble started. The bartender's 6 eyes blinked in rapid sequence, a sign of nervousness. Finally, Kral placed a hand on Xerxes' shoulder. "Honor the bet, Clutch brother," he said quietly, though his translator still picked up the words. The human won fairly. Xerx seemed to struggle internally for a moment before straightening to his full height. "I, Xerx of the 3rd Clutch of the Krevlaxian High Fleet, acknowledge that the human species possesses skills and traditions worthy of respect. Their apparent simplicity hides deeper complexity and effectiveness." A murmur of approval went through the crowd. Jack nodded, satisfied. "Thank you, that's all I wanted." But Xerx wasn't finished. "However," he continued, his vertical pupils fixing on Jack, "I cannot believe that such consistent success is due to chance alone. You must have some secret technique, some hidden advantage." Jack smiled slightly. "You're right. I do." This caused another stir in the bar. Even Xerx looked surprised at the admission. "You see," Jack explained, rolling up his right sleeve to reveal a simple black tattoo on his forearm. The design showed 2 dice with the number 636 below them. "This isn't just decoration." "What is it?" Traz asked, speaking up for the first time in a while. "A reminder. 6 out of 36. The odds of rolling a 7, Jack said. "Before I joined the cargo cruise, I worked for 3 years as a dealer in the New Vegas casino on Luna Colony. I've thrown dice professionally for thousands of hours." Understanding dawned on the aliens around him. The Krevlaxian scales shifted through several color patterns. "You're a professional?" Xerx asked, his voice a mix of anger and grudging respect. "Was," Jack corrected. "Now I just play occasionally, but yes, I was trained to control the dice. It's an old human skill. We call it dice setting or rhythm rolling. With practice, you can influence the outcome. Not guarantee it, but shift the odds in your favor." The 6-eyed bartender floated closer. "You didn't cheat, you used skill." "Exactly," Jack confirmed. "The dice aren't rigged, the game isn't fixed. I'm just very, very good at throwing dice in a way that slightly increases the chances of certain numbers coming up." One of the floating, crystal quartz beings moved forward, its body glowing a soft blue. "This is fascinating," it said, its voice sounding like wind chimes. "Your species has developed physical techniques to influence random systems?" Jack nodded. "Humans have been studying probability in games of chance for centuries. Dice games go back thousands of years in our history. Some people spend their whole lives mastering the skills." Kral's vertical pupils widened. "So when you said games teach important lessons?" "I meant it," Jack said. "Dice games teach risk management, probability assessment, and how to keep a calm face when the stakes are high. Card games teach psychology and reading opponents. Board games teach strategy and planning." The bar had become quiet again, but now it was a thoughtful silence. The various alien species were considering Jack's words, looking at humans in a new light. "Your people developed these skills before you had advanced technology?" asked one of the 4-armed Veldarians. "Long before," Jack confirmed. "They helped us survive and thrive. Understanding risk and reward, reading others, maintaining composure under pressure. These are skills that served us well when we were still hunting on the plains of our home world, and they serve us well in space." Xerx had been quiet, his scales slowly returning to their normal green shade. Finally, he spoke. "I misjudged your species, Jack Wilson. I saw your simple tools and assumed simple minds." "It's a common mistake," Jack said with a small smile. Humans look unimpressive compared to many species. We don't have 4 arms or natural scales or the ability to float. We developed different kinds of strengths. The bartender's scanner beeped, reminding everyone of the credits still waiting to be claimed. Jack tapped his wrist unit against it, transferring his winnings to his account. "Let me buy a round for everyone," he offered, looking around the bar. Cultural exchange should be celebrated. This brought cheers from the crowd. The bartender began preparing drinks for the various species, each according to their biology and preferences. Xerx hesitated, then extended one of his upper arms toward Jack. "Among my people, this gesture acknowledges an equal." Jack reached out and clasped the alien's arm in a firm grip. "Among humans, we call it a handshake. It means the same thing." The security officer by the door relaxed visibly, seeing that the potential conflict had transformed into something more positive. The various alien species began to mingle more freely, many approaching Jack with questions about human games and traditions. "You should see what we can do with cards," one of the human miners called out, pulling a deck from his pocket. This drew another crowd as he began demonstrating shuffling techniques. As the evening continued, the atmosphere in the Lonely Star changed. Species that had barely acknowledged each other before were now talking, sharing drinks, and even attempting to learn each other's games. Jack found himself sitting at a table with the 3 Krivlaxians and several other aliens, explaining the finer points of poker. As he dealt cards around the table, he couldn't help but smile. His primitive human game had accomplished what years of formal diplomacy sometimes failed to do: create genuine understanding between different worlds. "Your move, Xerx," Jack said, sliding cards across the table to the Krivlaxian. "Let's see how quickly you can learn another human game." Xerx picked up his cards carefully with his lower arms, while his upper arms held his drink. "I believe humans have a saying, 'Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.' I will be watching your hands very carefully, Jack Wilson." Jack laughed. "That's the first rule of poker. Always watch your opponent." 3 days later, Jack walked through the busy main concourse of Omega Station. His shore leave was almost over. Tomorrow morning, he would report back to the Star Voyager and return to his regular duties as a cargo loader. But these had been 3 very unusual days. Word of the game with the Krivlaxians had spread across the station. The Lonely Star, once a quiet bar in an out-of-the-way corner, was now packed every night. Aliens from dozens of species came to watch humans demonstrate their primitive games. The human miners had set up a regular poker night. A woman from the Star Voyager's engineering team was teaching aliens how to play chess. Even Captain Rogers had heard about it and had stopped by to watch. Jack had become something of a minor celebrity. Aliens would recognize him in the corridors and ask about dice games or other human pastimes. He had been invited to private gambling clubs in the upper levels that normally didn't allow humans. He had politely declined most invitations, not wanting to push his luck too far. As he made his way through the crowd, Jack spotted a familiar tall green figure ahead. Xerx was standing with a group of Krivlaxians near one of the large viewports that looked out into space. Jack considered walking the other way, but Xerx had already seen him. "Jack Wilson," the alien called, his translator making his voice carry above the noise of the concourse. "Join us." Jack hesitated, then changed direction and walked toward the group. Besides Xerx, there were 4 other Krivlaxians, including Kral and Traz from the bar. The others were strangers. "Clutch brothers," Xerx said to the group. "This is the human I told you about." The 2 new Krivlaxians looked at Jack with obvious curiosity. Their vertical pupils widened slightly as they studied him. "The Dice Master," one of them said, the translator giving the words an odd emphasis. Jack smiled. "Hardly a master, just someone who's played a lot." "Don't believe his modesty," Xerx replied. "He beat me 3 times in a row, against the odds. We have been discussing your games," Kral said. "They are more complex than we first thought." Jack nodded. "Most human things are." One of the new Krivlaxians stepped forward. She was slightly shorter than the males but had brighter green scales with intricate patterns. "I am Nexra, Chief Cultural Officer of the Krivlaxian Diplomatic Mission to the Galactic Union. Your demonstration has caused quite a stir. I wasn't trying to cause a stir, Jack said. Just wanted a quiet drink. Nexra made a gesture with her upper arms that Jack now recognized as amusement. Nevertheless, you have caught the attention of many species. Several Union representatives have expressed interest in learning more about human games and their cultural significance. Jack blinked in surprise. Really? Over a simple dice game? Not just the game, Nexra explained. The skill behind it, the history, the psychology. Many older species had forgotten that physical skills can be as valuable as technological advancement. The viewport beside them showed a magnificent view of space. A large passenger liner was just departing from one of Omega's docking arms, its engines glowing bright blue as it pulled away. Stars stretched out beyond it, countless points of light against the blackness. We Krivlaxians have been spacefaring for over 1,000 years, Zerk said, following Jack's gaze to the stars. In that time, we came to believe that advanced technology was the only measure of a species' worth. We were wrong. Jack wasn't sure how to respond to this unexpected admission. Everyone has their own strengths, he said finally. Humans are good at adapting and learning. And games, Traz added. Do not forget the games. They all laughed at that, even the translator devices picking up the humor. Actually, Nexra said, when the laughter died down, that is why I wanted to meet you. The Union Council is organizing a cultural exchange event next month. Representatives from all member species will demonstrate unique aspects of their culture. I would like to invite humans to showcase your games. Jack's mouth fell open. Me? I'm just a cargo loader. You should talk to our official representatives. I have, Nexra replied. But they suggested I speak with you directly. You have first-hand experience making these games understandable to other species. Jack thought about it. The idea was appealing, but he had a job, a life. I'm shipping out, tomorrow. My contract with the cargo company has another 6 months. Zerk stepped forward. The Krivlaxian delegation would be willing to buy out your contract or arrange a temporary reassignment. This is important diplomatic work. Jack looked around at the aliens, trying to process what was happening. 3 days ago, Zerks had dismissed humans as primitive. Now he was offering to help Jack become some kind of cultural ambassador. Why is this so important to you? Jack asked honestly. The Krivlaxians exchanged glances before Nexra answered. The Galactic Union is facing challenges. Some newer member species are having difficulty integrating with the older ones. There are tensions, misunderstandings. Like assuming someone is primitive just because they use simple tools? Jack suggested with a small smile. Exactly. Nexra agreed. Your demonstration showed how wrong such assumptions can be. It reminded many species that there are different kinds of advancement, different measures of worth. Kral joined in. The Union needs this reminder. Too many species judge others by their own standards. They miss the unique strengths each brings. Jack leaned against the viewport railing, thinking. He wasn't a diplomat or a teacher, but he did know games. And if that knowledge could help humans find their place in the galactic community, I'd need time to prepare, he said slowly. And I'd want to bring in other humans with expertise in different games. Chess masters, poker champions, maybe even video game designers. That can be arranged, Nexra said, her scales brightening with what Jack assumed was excitement. The event is still in the planning stages. And what exactly would I be doing? Jack asked. Teaching aliens to play craps? That and more, Zerk said, explaining the cultural significance, the skills each game teaches, how games reflect human psychology and history. Jack thought about his small cabin on the Star Voyager, the repetitive work of loading and unloading cargo. Then he thought about the faces of the aliens in the Lonely Star when he'd explained dice setting. The curiosity, the new understanding, the respect. I'll need to talk to my captain, he said finally, and think about it overnight. This is a big change. Of course, Nexra agreed. The offer remains open. Take the time you need. Jack nodded his thanks. As they spoke, a station announcement echoed through the concourse. Attention all passengers. The luxury liner Celestial Dreams will depart from Dock 6 in 30 minutes. Final boarding call. That's my ship, Nexra said. I must return to the Union capital. My assistants will remain on station to coordinate with you if you accept our offer. She made a formal gesture with all four arms. It has been an honor, Jack Wilson. You have given the Union much to think about. As Nexra departed, Zerx turned to Jack. Whatever you decide, you have earned my respect, both for yourself and for humans. Jack smiled. That was worth more than the credits I won. Speaking of which, Zerx said, his scales shifting to a lighter green, would you be interested in one more game before you decide? My quarters have a proper table. Your dice against my strategy game, Koslek. That sounds like a fair exchange, Jack agreed. But no betting this time, just friendly learning. Agreed, Zerx said. Though I must warn you, I am considered a master of Koslek. You won't find it as easy to beat me at my own game. Jack laughed. I wouldn't expect to. The point isn't always winning, it's learning from each other. As they walked together through the station, Jack noticed how differently other aliens looked at them now. 3 days ago, he had been just another human, ignored or dismissed by most non-humans. Now, walking beside Krivlaxians as equals, he received nods of acknowledgement, curious glances, even a few greeting gestures. You've changed things, Kral said quietly, noticing Jack's observation. More than you know. All with 2 small dice, Jack replied. Sometimes the smallest tools create the biggest changes, Zerx said. Another lesson humans have taught us. That evening, in Zerx's quarters, Jack learned the ancient Krivlaxian game of Koslek. It was complex, with pieces that moved according to mathematical patterns and boards that changed configuration throughout play. He lost 5 games in a row before beginning to understand the basic strategy. In return, he taught the Krivlaxians poker. They struggled with the concept of bluffing at first. Their scales changed color with their emotions, making it nearly impossible to hide their reactions. But they were quick learners, adapting by using their color changes to mislead rather than hide. As the night went on, Jack made his decision. Tomorrow, he would speak to Captain Rogers about taking a leave of absence. The Union needed what humans could teach, and humans needed to find their place among the stars. Sometimes the path forward wasn't through advanced technology or powerful weapons, but through understanding, and sometimes that understanding could start with something as simple as a game. Jack rolled the dice one more time, showing the Krivlaxians another technique. As the small cubes tumbled across the table, he smiled to himself. Humanity's primitive tools were opening doors across the galaxy. Not bad for a cargo loader with 2 small dice in his pocket. The end.